all these strategy factors, so basically all these qualities and themes, and will be able to identify what are the areas where they need to get better, right? And not only that, but we will also give them some recommendations on things that they can do to get better. The careers tool is something that I mentioned before, right? When we were saying there's like a very quickly changing job market out there for students, so it might be a bit difficult to advise them. I also understand that it happens in many schools that often there's like some parental expectations on what kind of job they should be taking. Maybe they should be taking a family business and so on. So it can be very difficult to advise them on what is the good career for them, or even to empower them to justify their choices, right? So the careers tool can be amazing for that, because this is really the latest data. They come from over 40,000 job websites, so they're updated every month. Every month we pull out again what are the skills required, how many job posts are there out there for this profession, what is the salary progression and so on. So everything gets updated, so they can really show what is the latest, and they can use this to make a choice, but also to reinforce their choice where they really stand for something. So we will show them, the degree subjects that are related to get there, jobs that are similar and maybe not exactly what they're looking at, but they might be interested in, potentially a salary progression, and then the skills that are usually related to that subject. Now here we see a profession that has been actually decreasing in demand in the past years. So this is something that should stand out a little bit. There are actually, if you play around with this, there are actually quite a few professions that we used to think were really likely to give students employment that are showing decreasing trend actually. So it does not mean that they might not find a job or anything like this, but maybe it means that they just have to choose like a more specific area. They have to be more specialized or something like that. Right, so the core of the platform is where they move on next. So this is the famous profile builder and university matches. Let me ask any of you, when you first started thinking about university, about college, how did you go about it? How did you start? What was the first thing you did?
Based on our interest.
Sorry?
Based on our interest.
Based on your interest, right? And so your interest was?
Computer science.
Computer science, and then from there you just went on and searched for?
We will search for a postgraduate
No, we will just choose first which colleges have the course.
First you look at which colleges have the
has
course.
the course what we prefer it. So in that which college is the best? And top ranking universities we will go.
Okay, so you start thinking, you started with a list of colleges basically, right, that have that course. But where does that list come from? Because there are so many colleges out there.
Through friends, family, and we
friends.
surf into net.
Right, so that's similar to what I did, although I didn't know what to study, so my parents told me what to study, and then I went on to search the colleges that offered that. What happens is that, of course, this is the best that we can do when we don't have anything else. Where your parents have been, where your friends are going, and hearsay, people around you. But of course, as I was pointing out to students today, even just within India are like so many options for something like computer science, right? It's humanly impossible to know all of them. Of course, it's a great point where to start, to have like recommendations from friends and people that know you well, but it's not all. And it also does not mean that it's going to be the best fit for that specific student. So the idea behind Burju is that we want them to see options that no one in their surrounding might know of. It might even be that the options that come up are actually exactly those, even better, because we don't have to go too much out of our way. But in reality, we might be bringing up some very different options. And so that's the point of the profile builder and the university matches. We start from there. Students, of course, will input their interests, so their subject interests, but it will also give us other bits of information. For example, their grades, which are, whether we like it or not, they have to have the grades to get in certain colleges, so we might just exclude the ones that are too far out or like too difficult for them to get in. And the personal preferences. So that bit that I was explaining today to students, try to consider also the living environment and the learning environment in which you will be in. One of the biggest problems that American universities are facing nowadays, I honestly don't know how the situation is in India, but in the US there's a huge dropout rate from universities. Students don't finish. And that creates a lot of problems for students, of course, because they have to pay for it, they probably have debts, right? It also creates problems for universities because they don't have the enrollments that they thought they would have until the end. So it tells us something about the way students make the choice. And there probably is something more beyond academics that determines whether students are going to stay in universities. And quite a few things have shown us that also the living environment, the learning style, the way students are evaluated, whether it's exams or project work, that makes quite a lot of difference. And so they will input all these bits, and eventually we'll go to the university's page. So the university's page is where they get their matches. Now, just to point out, before I go into the university cards, at the top they have the universities in India. So because there are so many colleges and so many options in India, that is a separate portal that they look at. And we can take a look at it quickly. Open it up. And again, I encourage you to use it and also give us feedback. For example, if there's something that you cannot find or that is not intuitive. But basically, they can start searching by colleges, exams, or courses. And as we scroll down, we have even more options because they can look into admission requirements and scholarships, for example, or they can go straight to choosing a domain, which is pretty much what we used to do, right? So they also have that option available. And as they go through these colleges and find information about them, then they can go back into Bridgeu and save them as their favorite universities, so that then they can eventually go into an applications list. So this is for India. But I see quite a few. Sorry, did we have questions? Do you want me to go back to this?
Madam,
Yeah.
How did you start this one? Where did you start it? I mean, the page, how did you come to it?
How did we come to it?
First page.
So-
Suppose that we are going to the bare page, that is in Google, okay?
Yeah. So I will leave you by teaching you how to create a dummy student account so that you can play around with it. But basically, after a student, you will have a dummy student account and you can go and check what are the matches that come up for the student after you filled out the profile
No,
builder.
I mean just what we have to type in the Google.
Then you click here.
Bridgeu.com.
I to start from Bridgeu. Yeah, Bridgeu login.
Okay.
Right.
Excuse me.
Yes?
India college.
Yeah.
Okay, then
The view all the courses. You scroll down.
This one?
No. The courses was there, no?
Yeah.
Yes, that
This
view
one.
all courses.
Okay.
Dictionary and view all courses.
No, they separate dental, special pharmacy.
Should I scroll down?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Yeah, they're all there? Good. Cool. So, yeah. For other countries, and in this case we're looking at a student that is interested in the UK, this is how they show up. So the nice thing is that we don't overwhelm them immediately with a super long list of universities. So there's like 9 cards there, right? And we call them cards exactly for a reason. It's a little bit like a card game on the table. You will always have 9 cards showing, but then you have a stack on the side, right? And when one card goes out, we will bring the next one in. So the idea is that we want students to be able to start prioritizing without being overwhelmed by what they see on the screen. So they have this university card. For each card, we tell them what the chance of acceptance is, and that is the calculation that the matching algorithm makes to tell them this is pretty much your likelihood of getting an offer from this university. So there's like a complicated calculation behind it, but basically for the countries for which we do matching, which is Canada, US, UK, Japan, Hong Kong, the Netherlands, Germany, Spain, Australia. For these countries, we basically have data on university admissions, which means we know what are the grades of students that apply and the grades of students that get in. And we also know what is the percentage of applications that usually are successful. So a combination of this plus the grades of your students tell us where the individual student stands, does he or she stand a chance, first of all, and against basically the competition, so to say. So that's where that number comes from in simple words. And then we also bucket them so that they're able to choose hopefully a mix of these, right? You don't want them to go all for rich universities that are really hard to get into, but also not to be unambitious and choose just like the very easy ones to get in. So normally they will choose a mix of these. So they can start from here. They can start sorting out from here. If they're interested in a university, then they would save it in their favorite by clicking on the short list. Say we want to study philosophy, politics, and economics. We will shortlist this. That card will disappear, right? And the next best option will come up. So at the end of this column, we will have a new option. But the shortlisted card ends up here in the shortlist. And the shortlist is the space where they do research. So I'm not going to go too much into detail about this, but basically they are linked to the website, they have the details of the chance of acceptance, etc. And they can add notes on what they are learning about the university. And then Archana as well can add notes for them. Whenever she learns something about a university that might be interesting, she can add it in there for the student to see. And finally, once they have gone through a few universities, they will create an applications list, right? So that's the final bit. That's where we start doing the application process that is pretty tedious, unfortunately, for both the teachers and the counselors and the students. So we're trying to make it a little bit easier. Students will keep track of their applications here, so they can see, for example, if they selected a deadline, then it will be showing there. In this case, they haven't selected any, but you will see as administrator the same deadline, for example here. They can update the steps that they have taken. They will come back here, let the school know whether they have been offered something or not, most importantly if they're attending or not. So pretty much this is going to be the way for you to keep track of our students' applications. Now, the application period